All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, X Zone Nation. I'm Rob McConnell. This is hour 2 of tonight's show, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the Mutual Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, from our flagship station in St. Catharines, your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. X Zone Nation, we're going to be talking about something that, if I didn't know this was real, I would have thought that this was just a made-up story. But the story is very real. And we're going to be talking in this hour to our guest about Camp Lejeune. Now, this is a problem of water contamination that occurred at Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina, from 1953 to 1987. No, that wasn't a mistake. I said from 1953 to 1987. Now, during that time, the United States Marine Corps personnel and family at the base, as well as many international, particularly British assignees, bathed in and ingested tap water contaminated with harmful chemicals, all at concentrations from 240 to 3,400 times the current safe levels. Now I'm going to read that one more time. 240 to 3,400 times the current safe levels. An undetermined number of former residents later developed cancer or other ailments, including ALS, fatty liver disease, infertility, and Parkinson's disease, which could be due to the contaminated drinking water. Victims claim that the United States Marine Corps leaders concealed knowledge of the problem and did not act properly to resolve it or notify former residents. Now, in 2009, the U.S. federal government initiated investigations into the allegations of contaminated water and failures by the United States Marine officials to act on the issue. In August 2012, President Obama signed the January Ensminger Act into law to begin providing medical care for people who may have been affected by the contamination. In February 2014, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention found that the contaminated water at Camp Lejeune significantly increased the risk of possibly contracting multiple diseases, though they did not say that the water had caused any disease. Now, this is typical of bureaucracy. The Pact of 2022, Section 804, is the Camp Lejeune Justice Act of 2022. It provides damages for past injuries from Camp Lejeune due to the toxic exposure. And it is the first such law that provides compensation to civilian family members of veterans stationed at the base, as well as those who came onto the base to work. Joining me now is a lady who has first-hand knowledge of this story. She is the host of Man of Mysteries, a very popular show here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. Her name is Patrick SIMS, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Patrick and her husband, the late Bishop SIMS, for a number of years. And joining me now is Patrick SIMS. And Patrick, welcome to the X Zone. And this story is just unbelievable.
Yes, thank you, Rob. I'm very delighted to be here. But yes, it seems like something out of the movies or out of a sci-fi, channel, but it's real. My family lived it, and for years we were living it and didn't know where it came from. Nothing was making sense. My husband, who is now deceased, we did have 47 years together, but he was this robust Marine that took such good care of himself. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he didn't do any drugs. He would exercise, 5th-degree black belt, you name it. He ate really good, and he developed kidney disease, and he's one of 12 siblings and the 7th child, and we could not understand where it came from. Nobody in his family had it, but he developed it. And when we received a letter from the commandant, it was actually sent to us in October of 2008, but then they couldn't find it, so they sent it by the IRS. So we found out in January of 2009 about the exposure. Initially, I thought it was just his exposure because I thought it was only the fathers that could affect their offspring, their children. But I learned in 2020, May of 2020, that the mothers could be carriers too. So I kind of felt like, since I was there for 6 months, and when I was there, we didn't actually live on the base. We lived about 12 miles off base, but he was going to work every day. Kashanta, our firstborn daughter, who was conceived there, and my doctors were there, at the Navy base, and and she's deceased too. And my husband passed in my office. Well, it was a bedroom then, but he passed where I am right now, and she passed next door, and nothing made sense. I did notice just issues that she had as a child, and all of my kids really. But again, we were not able to connect the dots until we received that letter, and I was reading that, and then suddenly everything made sense. So I started doing research for 6 weeks in a row. And some of the things that I found out, Rob, were just so alarming that I stopped, because it talked about what tetrachloroethylene and trichloroethylene, which were 2 of the chemicals that we were exposed to, and him much more than myself. But still, when we would be on base, we would go to parties on base and just, to the movies or what have you, and just not knowing that we were drinking poison, and, people were cooking with it, and he was in the barracks until I got there. And then when I left, after I conceived Kashanta, because he was in the Marines and he was gone so frequently, he didn't want me to be there by myself. So he took me back home to mama after, when I was 6 months pregnant, to have my baby. So then he was back in the barracks again and exposed to all of that. And
when did you first receive any medical results from tests that drew a direct line to the medical conditions that your family was having with the contaminated water at Camp Lejeune?
It wasn't until we were, when Ken developed the kidney disease, and he actually was admitted into the hospital at stroke level. Wow. His blood pressure was out of control, and it was because really of the high blood pressure that we even discovered that he had kidney disease, because he was a deputy sheriff and was going to start a new job at a company that is known around the world. And we were so excited because for the first time in our lives, we were going to be making more money than we ever had. And He went for his physical at the job, and the nurse thought that the blood pressure cuff was broken, so she got a different one, and it registered the same. And because it was so extremely high, she told him, "Go and get your wife and go straight to the emergency room." Well, he came to get me at work, and he said, "But we got to go to the emergency room, but I'm hungry, so let's go get something to eat." And we did that, got to the emergency room. We walked in, and they had to do nitroglycerin under his tongue, and they just had to start immediately working on him because he was just leaving. He was leaving this world, and that started the journey. The high blood pressure is how we found out that he was in renal failure. And he was in the hospital for a long time, and after he was released, he had to start dialysis. And at that time, he was on dialysis 5 hours at a time for 3 days a week. And
my goodness,
it was pretty rough. Everything started to change for us then, and it was just ironic that when he left Mississippi, we're both Mississippians.
Mm-hmm.
And when he left Mississippi and joined the Marines, it was to better himself and then to make a better life for the both of us. We weren't married yet, but we did marry young, 17, and he was just turning 19. And the fact that he joined the Marines to make a life better for us and had no idea that it would be, I'm just really searching for a word to say, so devastating for not only him, but our entire family. We didn't know initially that the kids, or even myself, that we had been affected in any way. We just thought it was him having these issues. But when I did that research back in 2009, and I was saying that it was alarming, and I stopped the research because it said how that these chemicals could change the DNA of your children and of your grandchildren and of your great-grandchildren. And I was like, oh my Lord. And the things that it was describing as to what it could do and the medical problems that it could cause, I thought, I've got to stop reading this, stop looking at this. So for a long time, I was pondering things in my heart that I never spoke about or talked about, but we knew that Ken, when we got the letter, we understood about the kidney disease and the high blood pressure and several other issues that he had, because his issues started in 1982, and it just began to escalate from there, just one thing after the other. And when we went to the doctors here in Oklahoma, because we were in Oklahoma during that time, we went home to Mississippi in June of '88 on my deceased daughter's birthday, June the 1st, because my mother had cancer and wasn't expected to live.
Patrick, I hate to interrupt you, my dear friend, but I have to take my first break. Please stand by.
Oh.
This is a case where fact is stranger than fiction, Exonation. My guest this hour is evangelist Patrick SIMS, www.manaministries.net, and we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we continue from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Keep going.
Am I only dreaming?
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. This hour, we're talking about the Camp Lejeune water contamination that occurred at the United States Marine Base, Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina, between 1953 and 1987. According to one report, let me see here, 850 former residents filed claims for nearly $4 billion from the military. But I was talking to our guest briefly during the quick break that we just had, and our guest evangelist, Patrick SIMS, was telling me that millions of people were affected by what happened at Camp Lejeune. And you were saying, Patrick, that there are people who have been affected who really have no idea that they've been affected by what happened at the base.
Exactly. They have no idea, and we would not have known except for a Marine named Jerry Ensminger. He was the one that initially went to Congress and just really fought for our right, for the rights of everybody who were there to know that they were exposed to this toxic water, and it was because of his daughter Janie that act that you were talking about, the Janie Ensminger Act, that was his daughter, and she had leukemia, but she was the only one of his daughters that was born there, and her death just really affected him. But he heard something on the news one day, and he talks about this because he's been all over the news and just really fighting for us. Fighting for himself, but fighting for us and for everybody to just know and for the government to do right by the people that have been damaged. And he said that he had his plate of spaghetti and he heard it being talked about on the news, but it was so quick, like they were rushing through it or something. But he heard it, and he said he just dropped his plate in the middle of the floor because for the first time he understood why his 8-year-old baby died, and that started his journey. And so Jerry's been fighting this for a good going on 27 years now, and his partner Mike Partain is a part of that fight now, and they both go to Washington. Jerry was there when President Obama signed that the Honoring Camp Lejeune Families Act in 2012, and he was also there when President Biden signed the PACT Act. So they've been fighting, and it is definitely a fight because even with us, it's like they said that they admit it without admitting it. They never want to own up to it, but there's no way, as you already stated, that from 1953 to 1987 that they didn't know something. I just refuse to believe that. And our government has been known for doing these crazy experiments on people, and whether that was an experiment or not, it was just very cruel and unusual. It was punishment, and it's still punishment because I watched my husband and my daughter deteriorate before my eyes, and I was taking care of the both of them at the same time. Kashanta, we had the last 6 weeks with her. She had a family, so she didn't really want to be brought to Lawton, Oklahoma, but my daughter Camellia and her daughter were doing everything that they could, but she was noticing how she was going downhill, and she called me and she said, "Mom, it's time for her to be with her mother." So I went to get her and brought her back here, and she was still working. Her job did not even know how sick she was, and she wouldn't tell them because she didn't want them to start looking at her and thinking that she was making mistakes that normally they wouldn't have had any attention, give any attention to, because she was really, really good at her job. It was an international company. And when I got there, I told her to ask them if I could help her work, just work with her. And that's when she let them know how bad it was. She was on oxygen. And I would watch her, Rob, sitting at that desk with oxygen on and her phone and her just working, helping people. She would take time with the elderly and some of these nurses and doctors that were just having issues with technology. And she was just so good and so patient. And I would do like a lot of her entry work so that she could go downstairs and lay down, because she was diagnosed with HER2 triple negative breast cancer in 2012, but she had been misdiagnosed like a couple of years prior to that. And she passed in June of 2015, just 10 days after her 38th birthday. And like I said, in the room next door. But I was taking care of Kashanta and my husband, and both of them were critical. Kashanta at that time was on hospice. Ken didn't go on hospice until later, but they were both critical. So I had this baby monitor, and if I was in the kitchen, I had it midway where I could hear and know what was going on with the both of them. But if I spent the night in Kashanta's room, I had the monitor where I could hear what was going on with her father. And if he seemed to be more critical than her, and I stayed the night in his room, I had the monitor where I could hear what was going on with her. I never slept through a night. It was up and down. And I know when the first month, or at least maybe it wasn't just the first month because she was only with us for 6 weeks, but I lost 20 pounds because I would forget to eat. Because she had one diet that I had to prepare, and he had another diet. Because of kidney disease, he was always freezing. So I closed the vent in the bedroom where he was. I put the heating blanket on him. I put another heater in here, and I turned the air down so that the cold air could blast in her room, because she had so many tumors. She had malignant cancer, but it had spread to her brain and to her lungs and all over her body. So she just had this constant fever, and I had a smaller air conditioning unit placed in the window in conjunction with my AC, and she was still burning up. So in order to go into her room, I had to put on a coat and a hat or a scarf. And to come into my husband's room, obviously I had to shed all of that. So it was a lot of back and forth, and they had, this one had to have medicine at a certain time, and the other had to have medicine at a certain time. But I would do it all over again for either one of them, because it's just, there's no word that I know of for the death of a child, because that's out of order. They're supposed to bury us. We're not supposed to bury them. And here she was in the prime of her life, and had a daughter who was about 8 and another one that was about 14, and she was divorced, but she was a hardworking. She was actually a veteran. She had been in the Army herself and ran a hospital in Korea, and so she liked the medical field, but there were things about the orthodox medicine that she did not like. So the field that she was in had a different approach to how people receive their healing. And I even went with her. I drove her. Actually, she drove the way there. We went to Colorado, and I didn't want her to drive because we had just come back from San Antonio, and she had a stick. I could not drive a stick, but she could not drive for 12 hours or more from, not 12 hours. It was about 8 hours. So she could not drive from San Antonio to my location in Oklahoma. So I had to learn on the way, and I did pretty good as long as we didn't have to stop. And if we had to stop, I was jerking her around, and she was already in so much pain, Rob. I felt so bad. I just felt so bad for her. But I think the fact that I was concerned that I was going to tear the car up made me a little nervous. And anyway, when we got here, I rented a car for us to go. We spent the night here, and then we drove to Colorado to stay with a doctor friend of hers there and to just get some alternative medicine. And I'll be honest,
Right.
the doctor in San Antonio suggested the medicinal marijuana because of what she was dealing with. Nobody could believe it. Everybody, every doctor, every nurse, every professional, when they saw my baby, she's my child, I know, but she was so beautiful. She was a beautiful, dark complexion young lady, and they were heartbroken, and they couldn't wrap their minds around it, and neither could I. But I was going to do everything, because I remember seeing a report on television about what medicinal marijuana had done to help some people. So when the doctor suggested, hey, take her where, because it was not legal there, take her, because she needs some help, and this is helping some people with seizures and some other things. And so it changed my whole outlook. I still have my belief about it, but for the medicinal side, it was able to help her some, but it was really already too late. And I just had to keep this brave face, and every day these tumors were just popping out on her back and all over her body, and she would just be in so much pain, and I would massage her sometimes with the cream that we got from Colorado that really helped her pain. And I would notice that she would just look at me sometimes to see if I noticed that it was something new, because she knew every time something different was popping up on her body. I knew too, but I didn't want her to give up, and I didn't want to seem alarmed or anything. And it just got to the place where she could hardly walk, and I would have to help her to the bathroom and just everything. And we got, hospice helped a lot. But I remember the day that she passed, I had been back and forth, and when I went back into her room, she was the hospital sent a bed home with her because it made her happy. She said when she got here to Oklahoma and had to go to the hospital.
Patrick, I'm going to have to interrupt you again, and I would love to be able to skip these spots, but I can't. So please stand by, my dear friend. Exo Nation evangelist Patrick SIMS is my very special guest. Check out their website, manandministries.net. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If you would like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. And you can always just give us a call at 1-800-610-7035, and my extension is 1952. Always love speaking to members of the X Zone Nation, no matter where you are around the world. My guest this hour is evangelist Patrick SIMS. Now, Patrick has a show here on the X Zone Broadcast Network on our TV and radio channels. The name of the show is Man and Ministries. I don't know why I want to see Man and Mysteries all the time. Man and Ministries, radiotv.com. And Patrick, first of all, my heart goes out to you. I know the type of person you are. I know your lovely family. And I had the pleasure of knowing your husband for a very short period of time, but he certainly touched my heart the time that I did know him. Now, your husband's condition, was that a direct cause of what happened at Camp Lejeune?
There are 7 doctors that says yes, and two of them were actually VA doctors. Now,
Wow.
one of them was his VA doctor, and another one had been a VA doctor. And when he went to her, the same thing. She just was so upset that she wrote 2 letters to the VA and said, give this man 100% disability, because they did their research and they connected it to what happened there at Camp Lejeune. But they have all of their ways of, again, admitting without admitting it. And I thought, in fact, I know that a doctor did tell me that he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which was one of the presumptives. But when I got a last denial letter, they said how it wasn't, what he had was not actually the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And they explained, what the issue was and why they couldn't classify it as the non-Hodgkin's. But nevertheless, he did have the kidney disease, and that's really what the doctors were focusing on, was renal failure and the kidney disease. And they were saying that he neglected his blood pressure, and that's what caused it, that it really was not their fault, but it was a vicious cycle. And I know he tried religiously to get his blood pressure lowered, and ultimately he was the one that finally got it where it was never normal, but where it was not as high all the time. And it was because of himself talking to the doctors. He just really took control, really, of his situation. So he learned the kidney dialysis machine. He became a type of advocate, if you will. One of the nephrologists from Africa would have him come and do sessions for new patients to see how they could function, because Ken put himself with 16 gauge needles. He put himself on the dialysis machine, and that happened because a nurse in Mississippi, when he first started dialysis, blew a vein and it just swelled up so bad, and he was like, okay, I'm going to learn how to do this for myself. And even sometimes when he was in ICU, I would have to get on him because he would have to still have dialysis, and he still thought that he could do it because he didn't want nobody else to do it but him. But there were times where I had to pull rank on him and say, no, you're not. They're going to do it. And, he would listen to me. But yes, I have letters that I was looking at today where they believe his VA doctor that we went to, believed that was why. And he stated it in his letter, that it was more likely than not. So
when it comes to the Department of Veterans Affairs, has Ken's case been officially attributed to the events at Camp Lejeune?
No, it hasn't. They even though I kept submitting, and I will. I mean, they got a tiger by the tail, because I will never give up on it. Jesus would have to come and get me before I give up on it, because I know. And I actually went before a law judge June the 2nd of 2022, and I know that I proved my case with my information and my documents, and I even had pictures to show, because it was a video, so it was it was a virtual conference, if you will. So the judge and I were able to see each other, and he just really let me share. And my spiritual son said that he could see tears in the eyes of the judge as I was, because I did get emotional because I was angry. Because, you know, we had been fighting this fight for so long, and they still had not given him not even 100% disability, not even 100% unemployability. And he actually should have had that years before he ever passed. He passed in October of 2018. And I showed them documents and letters from doctors and records from medical records that was stating all the issues that he had. He had so many issues, like not just the renal failure and the kidney disease and being on dialysis, he had congestive heart failure.
My gosh.
He had to have his tricuspid and his mitral valve in his heart were to be repaired, but the heart doctor in Oklahoma City only repaired the mitral valve because he deemed that it was not going to help him much, even though his heart doctor here in Lawton wanted them both to be repaired. And the fact that he didn't caused, down the line, it caused greater issues on that one valve that was working. He had some issues with his liver, pancreatitis.
So there was a lot. How can anybody deny that there was no direct connection?
Right.
Like what we also found out was the contamination appears to have affected the water from 2 of the 8 water wells on the base. The main chemicals involved were volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, such as PCE, a dry cleaning solvent, TCE, a degreaser. However, more than 70 other chemicals have been identified as contaminants at Lajeune. So how in the name of heaven can they say, well, you know, even though the bishop or Ken was at the base, his multiple illnesses have nothing to do with the contamination?
Right.
That makes no sense.
Made no sense at all. No sense at all. And I think the thing that aggravated me the most was that I know people in this town that lied, and there's nothing wrong with them, but they lied, and they get 100% disability.
Wow.
And my husband was in the Marine Corps and the Army. And it was a fight. I fought and finally got him 40%. And then I fought more. I kept fighting. I always would fight. Every time they send me denial, I send them back a rebuttal. And the last one that they sent before, and I think that really just broke him when he saw that, because Ken was really trying to hold out because he felt like he was leaving me in a bad financial position. So he suffered a lot just trying to wait them out. But you know, when he received that last, it was around about August or September, that denial letter, and I saw the look on his face, and he was just broken. I think he just couldn't believe it himself, and he just decided after one night we were in this room here, and I was in an easy chair next to the bed. Sometimes for 6 months, I slept in the easy chair because he was just so, this was before Shan was here. He was just so critical, and he had broken his leg. By this time, Shan had passed, and he had broken his leg in 3 places, and I wanted him to move over in the bed. And he was pretty much bedridden at this time, but he was still going to dialysis with the help of our spiritual son. And so I told him, I said, well, baby, let's get you over, because the last thing we need is for you to fall again. And he said, okay. Now, he was 6'4", long arms, but the bed that I had in here was so it would accommodate him. So it was just a regular full-size bed because our king size in our bedroom was too high and just too difficult for him to get in and out of. And so I would sleep in here with him until he was so sensitive, you could touch him and he would just go into orbit from the pain.
Oh, gosh.
And sometimes in my sleep, I would hit him. So he put me out the room. The last time that happened, he said, baby, you got to go. So I had to go. I had to move across, but I would sleep at the foot of the bed so that I could look in here and see what was going on with him. But he tried to pull himself, and I was trying to push him by his buttocks, and he was nothing but skin and bones. But it was like trying to move a ton of bricks, and we were both out of breath. And he turned back over, and he said, "How did we do?" And I didn't want to tell him. We did absolutely nothing. So I just said, well, let's try a little bit more. And we tried a little bit more, and still nothing happened. And when he turned back over, he said, "Baby, what can we do?" And I said, well, tomorrow I will call home health, VA home health, and see if they can start, if we can get on the program and they can start helping with times like this. And about 60 seconds later, he said, no, he said, "This is breaking your body down. I'm going to go home and be with Jesus." And that was about 10 o'clock, a Thursday night. And he said, by 6 o'clock, which would have been Friday the next day, by 6 o'clock at supper time, I'm going to be with Jesus. And he said, "I'm going to call the girls, call the kids," not because we have a son too. We still had two girls. I have an adopted daughter, so I have a firstborn and an eldest. And he said, "I'm going to call the kids and tell them." And then he said, "But except I'm not going to call Chameleon." I said, "And if you don't, I am," because they were very, very tight. And I said, "You are not leaving this earth and leaving me here," and you didn't tell her. So if you don't tell, I am.
All right, stand by, Patrick. We have to take our final break for this hour. Exonation evangelist Patrick SIMS, my very special guest, a good friend of the X Zone. And if you'd like to find out more about Patrick and the great work that she does with her ministry, Manna Ministries, visit them online at mannaministries.net. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. And we're coming to you on the X Zone Broadcast Network and from our flagship AM radio station, your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streamed around the world on classic1220.ca.
Cherish is a word I use to describe all the feeling that I have hiding here for you inside. I don't know how many times I wish that I had told you. You don't know how many times I wish that I could hold you. You don't know how many times I wish that I could roll you into someone who could cherish me as much as I cherish you.
Welcome back, everyone. Evangelist Patrick SIMS is my very special guest, and her website and the website for Manna Ministries, where you can read about each and every wonderful member of the ministry, www.mannaministries.net. First of all, Patrick, thanks very much for coming on and sharing your story with the Exonation. But I'd like to ask you, what happened with the bishop as well as your daughter and the trials and tribulation that you and the other members of your family have gone through? Did this strengthen your faith in Jesus and God?
It actually did. It really did, because I know that they were not just in my past, they're in my future, because both Ken and Shan had a relationship with the Lord, and their last days, I saw a lot of worship and just knowing that they had their assurance, their life assurance, their spiritual life insurance gives me hope. And I believe, just because I didn't see them, that I didn't see their healing manifest on this side, it didn't cause me to doubt that God is able and that he does it. I've laid hands on people since then that God has healed, and he's sovereign. So the reason that he has his reasons for their healings not manifested, because my husband had more faith than anybody I had ever seen in my life. He was a man that prayed all through the night and always reading his Bible. And he was so well versed and so knowledgeable. And he told me in 1992, when he was first diagnosed with kidney disease, he said, kidney disease will not kill me. I will not die until I'm empty of every sermon, every painting, every book, because he's an author too, or was an author too. And he said, I won't die until I'm ready. So he told us he was ready and he was going to leave that next day. But then he changed his mind and he said, I'm going to leave Wednesday instead. And I said, well, babe, I don't ever want you to go.
Right.
But I want you to stay here in this pain that you have been in. Because I watched Ken die, really, Rob, for like 5 years. And it was just, it takes a toll on you. And he heard me, but it was like, no, I'm looking for something for you,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got to know that it came. And it did on Monday. And so I told him that Monday night that what he was looking for came. And I said, you can go home to be with that Jesus that you love so much. And that a few hours later, that Tuesday, he did. Ken always said that he wanted to die preaching in the pulpit or with his family around his bed. And it was basically that way, not in the pulpit, but with the family around his bed, because he ministered Jesus to people until he died. And his faculties were all there. It was just his body betrayed him. And Camellia and Jara were here because he did call her and tell her, yeah, Daddy's leaving. And so, but she had given him permission in July to leave because, he told her that he had lung cancer and no telling what else, because tumors were popping out all over his body too every day. It was just something different. Looked like he had been in the ring with Muhammad Ali.
Oh,
and
God.
it was just a horrible thing. And then the unit where we were prior for so many years gave us bed bugs, and that's a whole nother story too, but it affected him. But he, on that Tuesday, I went in like three different times, and every time I come back in the room, I would kiss him, and he was leaving, and he would just stop. He'd look at me like, you got something to say to me? What is it? He was very patient. So I told him after that second time, I said, Ken, just go on. Whatever I do, I have the can't help it. So you go on. Don't come back anymore. Just go. So that third time he did. He went on, and we were singing around his bed, and he gave us all instructions about what he wanted us to do at his memorial service. He gave the pastors instructions and his spiritual children and us and me. He told me what he wanted me to sing, and even though I was familiar with this song, it was a choir song, but I did it, and I had the help of some other people. But I got through that song all the way. I sung at his funeral. I sung at Kashanta's funeral because Kashanta wanted me to sing a song by Mahalia Jackson, Move On Up a Little Higher. The night before she passed, we were sitting in the bathroom. I was sitting on the tub while she was sitting on the stool. And she said, Mom, sing Going Up Yonder. Not Going Up Yonder, but Move On Up a Little Higher. And I said, well, babe, I can't sing it full blown, but I'll sing it falsetto for you. And then tomorrow I'll sing it out because your dad he's resting and I don't want to wake him up. And she said, okay, but I never got to sing that song to her because she passed at 8 p.m. the next evening. And I sang that song at her funeral. And I look back at that video now of all of that, and it was nothing but the grace of God that got me through it. But I sang both of them because that's what she wanted and that's what he wanted. And I sang at my mom's funeral and at my grandmother's funeral too. And then for a friend, I did a concert at a funeral. Never had that asked of me before, but in San Antonio. But anyway, I have my moments, but I don't grieve like other people grieve. And again, because I know where they are, and I don't wallow in pity. I don't get in the bed and cover my head and don't want to see anybody and don't want to talk to anybody. I want to talk to everybody. I want to tell them all about Jesus, that Jesus saves, Jesus heals. Well, he didn't heal your daughter and your husband. Well, they're healed now. Yes, he did heal them. They are both healed. They have no issues. So I'm thankful, just thankful to God that he is such an awesome God and that he loves us all. He loves us all very much.
Patrick, when did you and your husband start Manna Ministries?
We started Manna, the name, because we actually started a ministry. The original ministry was Living Word Outreach, and we started that back in 1985 in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Wow.
And then we had a Day Spring New Testament church when we moved to Mississippi. We were that church, and then here in Oklahoma, Manna Ministries, when we moved back in 2003, 2004. But that's when we learned that we were no longer to be pastors, but we still were always in ministry. But God knew what was up ahead, and so we did a lot of evangelizing, and we did street ministry, and we enjoyed that. I think out of everything, that I enjoyed the most was when we did street ministry, ministering to the prostitutes and the bikers and pimps and gangsters and stuff on a strip. But Ken actually led me to the Lord, though I was the one brought up in the church and reading the Bible and everything. He really wasn't, but he's the one that had the dream about end times. And he shared it with me when he woke up, and he said, "Baby, I don't want to die and go to a hell that wasn't even created for man." And something hit me like a bolt of lightning, and I knew what he was saying. I had to do something different. I was religious, but I was not saved. I was a believer, but I had not given my life to Jesus. And that day, I gave my life to Jesus at 17 years old.
Wow.
And I am 65 now, and I wouldn't trade this journey with the Lord for anything. Because even though my life has been filled with tragedy, and most people agree, much more than the average person, but I know I don't have a monopoly on pain, because I've also had many, many miracles, many divine intervention. And that's what my book is about, is 30 plus years of, in spite of what we were dealing with from the fallout of Camp Lejeune, we had so many miracles and so many people's lives that we were able to affect because of it.
Patrick, why don't you tell our listeners the name of your book and where they can get it?
It is I Witnessed, Believe What You Cannot See. My author name is Patrick Clark, which is my maiden name, Patrick Clark SIMS. And it's available in 25,000 locations, but Amazon, everybody recognizes. And so it's available on Amazon. It's also available on our website, mannaministries.net, but I connected it to, it's also connected to Amazon as well now. I used to would actually sell it and send the books out and everything, but it's easier to just let Amazon do all the work, the heavy lifting.
I guess so. We've got about a minute and a half left, Patrick. First of all, like I've said before, thank you so much for coming on the show. What message would you like to share with the X-Zone Nation tonight?
Just want them to know that no matter what it is you are dealing with in life, because everybody has some ups and some downs, and a lot of people, especially in the day and age that we're living in, the trials, the tribulations, and just, the unimaginable, the unthinkable. But just know that it doesn't matter what you're going through. When you call out to the Lord in sincerity, he will always hear you. And I want to encourage you that if you do not have a relationship with Jesus, it's simple. Romans 10:9-10 says that if we confess with our mouth and believe in our hearts that God has raised Jesus from the dead, that we can be saved. And it's as simple as that. You repent of your sins, ask Jesus to come into your heart. And that way, no matter what happens, you know that he promised he would never leave us and never forsake us.
Patrick, the time has come when I must say so long for now, my good friend. Thank you
Yes.
again, and please give my very best to your lovely family. You're in my thoughts, you're in my heart, and you're in my prayers.
Thank you so much. You're
You-
in ours as well, and we love you and your family.
Thank you, dear. We love you too. Exonation evangelist Patrick Sims has been my very special guest this hour. For more information on Manna Ministries, please visit their website, mannaministries.net. And you can watch the complete episodes of Manna Ministries radiotv.com at that website. I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. So until tomorrow night, my friends, remember, take care of each other. We are our brother's keeper. And always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.